Okay, Algebra 1 fans, our topic for today, this is Notes, Section 1-2, Order of Operations, or what you may have learned as PEMDAS or BIDMAS, depending on where you're from. Our objectives after this lesson, students should be able to evaluate numerical and algebraic expressions using the order of operations. Before we start, let me give you your joke of the day. What did the tired criminal need? And the answer is arrest. Okay, so we're going to start with two problems that I've seen on social media. These have been on Facebook is where I've seen them, and it's always funny. Two problems here. You can try to work this out yourself, and it's amusing because people that are my age like to get on these social media sites and they like to argue about why they have the correct answer and how somebody else is not very intelligent. And the problem is that a lot of times they're wrong. They're not quite sure what the actual rules are for the order of operations. Now, what should be happening here, so evaluate means to find the value, find the number, the answer. They're going to be tempted to subtract first and to do 5, make that 5. This is wrong, by the way. What I'm doing is wrong. So if I say this is 5, I'll put it on the side. And then times 0, minus 2 divided by 2. And then they want to multiply, that's 0, minus 2 divided by 2. Then they subtract, minus 2 divided by 2. And what they get is negative 1. And unfortunately, that is not correct. Because what we do first is we multiply. So negative 1 times 0 is 0. So this is 6. Plus 0, I can write that, minus 2 divided by 2. And then we do division, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So we have 6 plus 0 minus 1. Now we go left to right, that's 6, subtract 1, and the answer is 5. That is the correct answer. Now number 2 is a little bit different. And it kind of depends on the calculator that you have, what part of the world you're from. Everybody grows up in the United States with PEMDAS. And the M, which is multiplication, is in front of the D. What they don't realize is that the rule is actually, if you have multiplication and division next to each other, you do whichever comes first. Okay, so we would start with the parentheses. We would do 1 plus 2, which is 3. So we have 6 divided by 2 times 3. Now the temptation is to multiply next because this is what people are familiar with. However, you should actually do whichever comes first. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Now, just to show you on the calculator, if I type 6 divided by 2, parentheses, and I'll put the 3 there, this actually does it differently. And if I take my graphing calculator, though, what I'm going to get is actually 9. So this is one where, in the United States, I would say this is wrong. In the US, we would do whichever comes first, and I would say the answer is 9. However, right now I am in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and this calculator actually does the multiplication first. It follows this exactly, and 6 divided by 6 is 1. So, that's kind of interesting. So you might be able to argue that both answers are correct. I'm going to go with, in my class, that we would do that. But this situation doesn't come up all that often anyway for that. But you could make an argument that the answer is 1. Okay, so for the order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. That's how a lot of people have learned to memorize. P-E-M-D-A-S, PEMDAS. The P is parentheses, so I'm going to write the words in. And the E is for exponents, which we have talked about, like squares and cubes. And we always work from the inside out. So in this example here, 1 minus 5, parentheses squared, we would always do the parentheses first. That would be minus 4. Then we would raise that to the second power. Now this one, there's only one answer. When you square a negative, that's a negative times a negative, that answer has to be a positive number. If you use a calculator, you must use parentheses. So I would type -4, close parentheses, raise to the second, right there, and that's positive 16. M and D is multiplication. So multiplication and division, but left to right. 18 divided by 3 times 2. I would divide first, 6 times 2, and I would get 12. Now again, let me see here what happens if I type it exactly how they see it. And now this is interesting that the calculator actually did the division first. And depending on your calculator, I think that what's happening is that if you use parentheses, different calculators will interpret this differently. Okay, so this is why I'm saying this answer should be 12. This is the correct answer. If you have parentheses though, like we did up here, you could make a case that the answer would be 1 for that. All right, so it's kind of a subtle difference. For me, I'm always going to do, when multiplication and division are next to each other, I'm always going to go left to right. For addition subtraction, again, A and S is addition, so adding, subtracting, but you go left to right. Okay, so here we have subtraction first. So reading left to right, 3 minus 8 is -5. Then we add 7, and that's going to give us positive 2 for the answer. Okay? So it's order of operations. It's the order that we do our computation, our calculations. So let's do a couple examples. Directions, evaluate the following expressions. Number 3 is 5 minus 3 times 4. Now this is subtraction, but this is multiplication. Notice that multiplication comes before subtraction, okay? M comes before S. So here's the M and D is left to right, whichever's first, and the A and S is left to right, but M is always before S. So we're gonna multiply minus 3 times 4. We get 5 minus 12 equals -7. Here we have parentheses, so we're gonna do what's inside the parentheses first. So 2 plus 3 is 5, raised to the second. Every time I do this, I'm gonna write all the other values. I copy it every time, but it should get simpler. It should get shorter each time. Now this is multiplication, but this is an exponent. So exponents come before multiplication, so I do 5 squared. Now 5 raised to the second is 25. So this is 2 times 25. Now we multiply and we get 50. Okay, and I can always check. Now we want to do a lot of this with our mental math, but it's always a good idea to check on the calculator. So there's the original problem. I should get 50, and I do, so this is good. Now number 5, this is a long problem, but we're just gonna work step by step. So what we always do is we wanna look for, do we have parentheses? Start with parentheses. And actually in this case we have 2. We have 2 sets. We have these parentheses and we have these brackets, which are another form of parentheses. So we're gonna work from the inside out. So we'll start from the inside. 3 squared minus 8. Now you can do this, you can combine steps. 3 raised to the second, that's 3 times 3. So if you want to think, hey, that's 9 minus 8, and that's going to give me 1. You can do that, and so when I rewrite 6 minus 2, brackets, 9 plus 12, 3 squared minus 8, that's positive 1. And then divide by 4. Okay, so it's a little bit shorter. Now we still have brackets, parentheses, so let's do this here. That's plus, that's addition, multiplication, and then division. We're going to multiply first. So 9 plus 12 times 1 is just 12, divided by 4. Now we have addition and division. Well, division comes before addition. So we're going to do 12 divided by 4. So equals 6 minus 2 times brackets 9 plus 12 divided by 4 is 3. And again, each time this becomes shorter. I'm going to come up here. We still have the brackets. We can add 9 plus 3. So we get 6 minus 2 brackets 12. Now you got to ask yourself, this is subtraction. This is multiplication though. Our next move is to multiply. So we get 6. That's a negative 2 times 12, which is minus 24. And finally, we'll subtract that and we get negative 18. Now I'm going to check that. And the nice thing, depending on your calculator, is in this case, I can just type everything the way I see it. I'm going to use just regular parentheses for the brackets. So that's 9 plus 12, parentheses, 3 squared, and then minus 8, close parentheses, divided by 4, close the brackets, and we get negative 18. Okay, so we're looking good. Let's do 2 more here. 4 minus 1. So if you have a fraction, this is like 2 problems. You can do the numerator and the denominator at the same time because they're separate. 4 minus 1 is 3. Negative 2 plus 11 is 9. Now with fractions, we always need to reduce. We can divide each of these by 3. So we get 1 over 3. And that's a good answer. And then for number 7, excuse me, in the numerator, we're going to subtract. Now, minus a negative, when you subtract a negative, they both become positives. So that's really 2 plus 3, which is 5. Negative 2 minus 8 is negative 10. Both of these can be divided by 5. And we get 1 over, that's negative 2. Now, it's not wrong, but when you have a negative in the denominator, we usually pull it out front. So either negative 1/2, or you could put the negative in the numerator. I like to just pull it out front. Okay? You could also write as a decimal negative 0.5, and that is also good. And that is the end of part 1.